Chapter 4, Section 7, Operations with Polynomials in Several Variables. In this section, what we're going to do is we're going to follow the exact same process that we've done all chapter long, except now, instead of having one variable in the polynomial, we're going to have multiple variables in the polynomial. So we're going to add, subtract, multiply, evaluate with multiple variables. Same process we've gone through the whole entire chapter, but now we're going to have two or more variables. So for the first one, the directions say to evaluate. And remember, to evaluate, we're just going to replace all the variables. So in other words, we're going to replace x with 2, and we're going to replace y with -5, and do order of operations from there. So we have 4 plus 3 times x is 2, plus x is 2 times y is -5 squared, plus 8 times x, which is 2 cubed, times y, which is -5 cubed. From here, we're going to do order of operations, which tells me to do the exponents first. So we're going to have 4 plus 3 times 2 plus 2 times -5 squared is going to be 25, plus 8 times 2 cubed is going to be 8, times -5 cubed is going to be -125. Okay, now I can do the multiplication, so we'll have 4 plus 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 times 25 is 50, plus 8 times 8 times -125 is going to be -8,000. And then now we can combine from left to right, so we'll have 4 plus 6 plus 50 plus a -8,000. Which is going to give us a -7,940. Okay, combining like terms. So combining like terms with multiple variables is a little tricky. And the reason being is because, look at this very first one. In this very first one, notice that all terms have an x and a y. But for terms to be alike, they have to have the same variable and the same exponents. So again, remember the coefficient, the number up front, just tells us how many of each term that we have. So we have 4 x squared y's, we have 3 xy's, and we have -2 x squared y's. And so our like terms are going to be the 4x squared y and the -2x squared y. And so those are the ones that we're going to put together. And so we have 4x squared y and -2x squared y, which is going to give us 2x squared y. Remember, when you're combining like terms, when you're adding and subtracting, the exponents stay the same. Only when you get into multiplying do the exponents change. And then we're just going to bring down that 3xy. Okay, so in letter B, I have a -3pq and I have a +8pq. And so -3 and +8 is going to be 5pq. And then I have a -5pqr to the third and a +5pqr to the third. Those are opposites. They go away. Remember, when things are opposites, they go to 0 and we just mark them out. And then what we have is a -12 and a +4, which is going to be a -8. Okay, so let's add these. Here we have two polynomials that we are adding together, which means we're just combining like terms out of each group. So I have a 4x to the third and a -8x to the third, which is going to be -4x to the third. I have a 4x squared and a -2x squared, which is going to give me a +2x squared. I have a -8y and a +4y, which is going to give me a -4y. And then I have a -3 and a +5, which is going to give me a +2. Okay, for letter B, I have multiple variables again. So we have 13x to the third y, and we're adding 1x to the third y. Remember, there's a 1 here. And so we're going to have 14x to the third y. I have a 3x squared y and a 4x squared y, which is going to be 7x squared y. And then I have a -5y and a +3y, which is going to give me -2y. and then I have a negative 3xy to just bring down. Now, if you want to put this in descending order, technically, you should have 14x to the third y plus 7xy minus 3xy minus 2y. That's descending order because what you do is you look at your variables, alphabetical order, and you go from in descending order with your variable that comes in the alphabet first. So we go down on the x's, 3, 1, that should be squared. 3, 2, 1 for our x's, and notice all the y's are the same. So this would be technically descending order. I'm not going to be really picky about that, but just so you know. Okay, this time we're going to subtract. And remember, when we subtract polynomials, we're going to cross the line, change the sign if you need to, and I do. So I'm going to cross the line, make that main subtraction sign plus, and then change the sign of every term in the next polynomial, every term in the following polynomial. And then combine your like terms going back through addition. So I have a negative 4s to the fourth t, and I have a negative 4s to the fourth t, which is going to be negative 8s to the fourth t. I have a s to the third t squared and 5s to the third t squared, which is going to give me 6s to the third t squared. And then I have 2st squared t to the third, and I don't have another one of those, so I'm just going to bring it down. And I have a negative 1s squared t squared. Okay, so for letter B, again, we are subtracting, so I'm going to cross the line and change the sign of every term that follows. And then I'm going to combine like terms, so I have negative 5p to the fourth q and negative 4p to the fourth q. So negative 5 and negative 4 is going to be negative 9p to the fourth q. And then I have a 5p to the third q squared and a 4p to the third q squared, which is going to be 9p to the third q squared. Whoops, squared. And then I have a negative 3p squared cubed and negative 1p squared cubed. P squared q cubed. That's hard to say. So we'll have negative 4p squared q cubed, q to the third. Okay. And then I have a negative 7q to the fourth and a negative 2q to the fourth, which is going to be negative 9q to the fourth. And then lastly, I have a negative 2 and a positive 7, which is positive 5. So again, with the multiple variables and multiple exponents, it can be a little confusing. Just remember, like terms have the same variables and the same exponents. So two things that you have to look for, the same variables and the same exponents. Now, when you multiply, remember, when you multiply, we do need to add those exponents together. So for letter A, we have a binomial times a binomial. And remember, a binomial times a binomial, that's just the full method. And so we're going to take the first one, x squared y cubed times x cubed y squared. And so x to the second times x to the third, like bases, add the exponents. So we're going to have x to the fifth. Y to the third y squared is going to be y to the fifth. And then we'll take the x squared y to the third and multiply it times 3x. And so that's going to give us 3x to the third. Remember, there's a 1 here. And a y to the third. Now we'll take the 2x and multiply it through. And so that's going to give us 2x to the fourth y squared. And then take the 2x and multiply it times the 3x. And that's going to give us 6x squared. Look for any like terms. I don't have any like terms because all of the exponents are different. So that's it. Okay, so letter B, a binomial times a binomial. Again, that's the full method. So we have x times 2x, which is going to give me 2x squared. X times negative 5y is going to give me negative 5xy, descending order, alphabetical order. And then we have negative 3y times 2x, again, negative 6xy, descending order, alphabetical order. And then negative 3y and negative 5y is going to be a positive 15y squared. Now in this one, I do have like terms. These two in the middle are like, so I can put those together. So we have 2x squared negative 11xy plus 15y squared. Alright, letter C. Remember this? This is the binomial squared. You can either expand it and full it out, or you can do the pattern, and that's what I'm going to do because I think it's just an easy shortcut. So the pattern for this, remember, is square, double, square, square, double, square, square, double, square. Alright, so take the first one and square it. 4x squared is going to be 16x squared. Match the same sign. Multiply the two terms together. 4x times 5y is going to be 20xy and double it. So that's going to be 40xy. Always plus, and take the last term, 5y, and square it, which is going to give us 25y squared. Again, if you expand it and full it, you're going to get the exact same answer. Okay, so one more time, this, actually both of these are patterns. This is a binomial squared, which is your square, double, square. And this one is a sum and difference. Remember, in a sum and difference, what happens is the middle two terms go away instead of doubling. And so you just multiply the first times the first and the last times the last instead of doing the whole entire full method because the O and the I cancel out. Okay, so let's do the first one, square, double, square. So let's take the first term and square it. 3x squared squared is going to be 9x to the fourth. Match the sign. Multiply the two together. So 3x squared times 2xy squared is going to be 6. X to the third y squared doubled is going to be 12. X to the third y squared. Always plus, square the last, and we're going to get 4. X squared y to the fourth. Again, if you want to expand it, if it's easier for you to see, then by all means expand it and pull it out. Okay, so for letter B, this is a sum and difference. I know that because everything in the binomials are exactly the same except one's plus, one's minus. When that happens, all I have to do is multiply first times first. And so I have 4x squared y to the fourth. And then last times last. 3x times negative 3x is going to be negative 9x squared. Okay, so here are your practice problems. Please take your time and look at these carefully. Pay attention to detail because multiple variables can get very confusing. The answers are on the next slide. Bring them into class if you have any questions.